All right, so now we're going to read chapter 5. Remember, our purpose for reading is to determine the main ideas and key details about the Aztec capital city of Tenochtitlan and use information to compare and contrast the Maya and Aztec civilizations. Let's see our pronunciation table. This is Huitzilopochtli, Tlaloc, Calpul Yin, Calpulye, Calpulyin, Calpulye, Tlaloc, Huitzilopochtli, Huitzilopochtli. Okay, and then down here we've got Huitzilopochtli again, Ulometlili, Ulometlili, and Magi. Our big question is what factors led to the success of the Aztec capital of Tenochtitlan? We're going to be using pages 65 and 66 to answer the questions and record information about the chapter. Aztec City on the water's edge. Have you heard of Mexico City? Did you know that the modern capital of Mexico was built on the top of another city? If you visit Mexico City today, you can see archaeologists at work. They are busy uncovering the ancient city of Tenochtitlan. So this is where Mexico City is, right here. Tenochtitlan was the capital of the Aztec Empire in the 1300s and 1400s. This empire existed more than 500 years ago, or years after the Maya abandoned their great inland city-states. The ancestors of the people now known as the Aztec migrated from the north. By 1325 CE, they had settled in the Valley of Mexico. Other people had lived in Mexico's fertile valley for thousands of years before the Aztec arrived. Many groups were competing for space. The Aztec had several temporary homes, all of which they were eventually forced to leave. The land the Aztec finally claimed may seem an unlikely choice: two swampy islands in the middle of Lake Texcoco. What were some geographical features of the area where the Aztecs settled? Okay, well, we know that there were swampy islands in the middle of Lake Texcoco. And then based on the text, why was Tenochtitlan an important place? So it was the capital of the Aztec Empire in the 1300s and 1400s. All right, Aztec beginnings in Lake Texcoco. On the lake shore, the Aztec built mud huts and lived on food from the lake, frogs, fish, and algae. They hunted deer, rabbits, coyote, armadillos, and snakes. They raised bees, turkeys, and ducks. They gathered grasshoppers and worms for food. The Aztec adapted their swampy environment by creating habitable land from the lake bottom. They built gardens called chinapas, in the middle of Lake Texcoco. They built bridges over the marshes and grew a variety of crops on the mainland as well. They cultivated corn, beans, squash, tomatoes, amaranth, and chilies. Members of the ruling class grew fruit trees in their small personal gardens. Crops grew throughout the year in Mesoamerica, Mesoamerica's tropical climate. As food supplies expanded, Tenochtitlan grew. Okay, so now we're going to look at the caption surrounding this painting down at the bottom. Gardens built from the lake bed. The Aztec perfected a technique for building gardens in Lake Texcoco. First, they scooped up mud from the bottom of the shallow lake. Then they piled layers of mud and aquatic plants on top of one another. They used reed posts to anchor these rectangular gardens to the lake floor. They planted willow trees along the borders to help hold the artificially filled lakeshore in place. A series of canals crossed the Chinampas, providing a year-round source of water for crops. Fish and other aquatic life lived in the canals and were another source of food. Tenochtitlan, a well-planned city. Tenochtitlan was laid out on a grid. Its streets and canals formed patterns of squares. Its religious and ceremonial center was located at the heart of the city, the sacred precinct or pyramid temple complex. It was much larger than those at the Maya centers. Stone walls carved with serpents surrounded the precinct. The great temple, or Templo Mayor, dominated the space inside the walls. On top of Templo Mayor, the Aztec built shrines to honor the two most important gods. One shrine was dedicated to Huitzilopochtli, the sun god, and the other honored Tlaloc, the rain god. Social class determined where people lived, how they dressed, and how they earned a living. Aztec priests lived in palaces within the sacred precinct. Just outside the sacred precinct, the emperor and members of the noble class built carved stone palaces and beautiful gardens. Beyond the city center, Tenochtitlan was divided into 4 sections or quadrants. Each quadrant was divided into 20 calpullion or districts, each one by itself called a calpulli. Had its own farm, marketplace, and school. Commoners, including merchants, artisans, and farmers, lived together in the calpullin. They put their houses of sundried clay bricks called adobe. These one-story houses often had peaked thatched roofs. Others had flat earthen roofs used for planting gardens. Many people also built domed mud huts outside their homes. These huts were used as sweat baths. The Aztec lit fires outside the huts to warm the walls. They entered the sweat baths once the inside walls became hot. They threw their water against the heated walls, providing steam. The effect was similar to modern-day steam baths and saunas. Okay, over here we can see a picture of the city and some of the homes. At Tenochtitlan, many people were employed to sweep the streets and get rid of garbage. Each neighborhood had public toilets. Right. Causeways, aqueducts, and marketplaces. Lake Texcoco contains salt water. Providing fresh water for the population of Tenochtitlan was a challenge. The Aztec used sand, dirt, rocks, and wooden stakes to build 3 wide causeways. Each causeway was about 2.5 miles long. These wide raised roads connected the city to natural springs on the mainland. Each causeway supported an aqueduct, a structure built to carry water. The aqueduct consisted of two clay pipes. One transported fresh water from the springs into Tenochtitlan for drinking and bathing. The second pipe was a spare, used only when the first pipe needed cleaning. Bustling marketplaces filled Tenochtitlan and other cities, as the grand market in nearby Tlatelolco. Thousands of people traded daily for goods such as clothing, food, and pottery. Merchants brought goods to exchange from all over central Mexico and even beyond. What can you find to support the claim that Tenochtitlan was a well-planned city? Okay, they had those marketplaces, they had aqueducts, they had large pyramids and temples.